Hello and welcome, dear chess enthusiasts. Today we are going to discuss the King's Gambit Accepted. This gambit is really well known in the upper classes of chess leagues and in the super grandmasters, but it is not as popular as it could have been. It is a really powerful gambit if accepted. If declined, it probably you will lose if, and only if. But nevertheless, today we are going to discuss and look into that particular gambit. The gambit starts with e2 to e4, e5, and then f4. f4 is a powerful move because, well, you, after your opponent takes, if they don't take, you probably will lose. It's most likely. But if you, when your opponent takes, you are preserved to three opportunities. First of all, you can put your bishop to c4, which naturally develops your bishop, but this will be a mistake. See, after they took with the pawn, he takes f4. They open an opportunity for their queen to deliver check on h4. That's pretty hard to see for some beginner and even intermediate players, but nevertheless. So, this move, bishop c4, while brings great opportunity for you to develop your piece, is, as I see it, a mistake which you shouldn't make. Although this move leaves your opponent with a pretty solid structure, but with only one logical move. So if you know this line well, you have some chances to win it. For instance, you have to be super careful because after some move in between, say you move your king from the check, the black can play bishop to c5, which threatens mate. And if you overlook it, it will be mate. That's not the best thing you would ever love to. Although you can close with d4, it's still losing. Still not the best. Other really bad move is d4, which is, well, you know that in Queen's Gambit accepted, you should go e4, but in the King's Gambit, never go d4 to control the center. Yeah, this move seems logical, but only seems. Nothing else is logical in it. When the queen comes with a check, you now have to put your king to e2 or d2, which is far less preferable positions than the check the queen could have delivered if you moved your bishop. So this move, in my opinion, is an outright loss for you. But it can lead for some interesting combinations, because after you move your king, your opponent have lots of legitimate moves. Some of them are really aggressive, like d5. Some are more passive, like bishop to e7 or knight f6 or knight c6. Maybe, who knows? Well, in my opinion, which is quite not the controversial, I reckon that many of the super grandmasters agree with me. In the last minute of the chapter, but still, the good move here would be knight to c3, preparing to go d4. Because after knight to c3, the opponent can't move their queen to h4, which ultimately is the goal that you should aim to. On the other hand, knight to f3 presents your opponent with loads of opportunities. And we are going to discuss them all because essentially it seems that bishop to d4 is the main line. But I reckon that putting your knight is far more preferable for white. It's just better. You simply have more chances. Here, we should focus on four main moves. Knight to f6, knight to c6, d6, and g5. Let's start with g5. No, oh no, no, let's start with d6. After d6, when you develop your bishop, which is logical, your opponent tries to pin your knight to your queen. That's not as logical. But this is still a line and you don't have sufficient counterattack. Because when you play h3, your opponent can simply take. And it won't be a preferable position to castle. And before you castle queenside, it will take near eternity. But okay, some lower rated opponents prefer to play h6 in this position. You develop your bishop after d6. But I think this move is an outright garbage because it allows you to jump for some quick development or controlling the center or maybe trying to punish your opponent for this move. Well, although this move shows some sense, I highly doubt that it is played on any sufficient chess tournaments or else. Maybe that's probably the move for that when you is when you're higher than your opponent and you know more, so you are trying to round the chances. And in case, yeah, when they attack your horse, your best course of action will be to castle. Castling is important. Okay, on the other hand, we have good moves such as knight to f6. Very controversial move. Some may argue that this is the best move in such a position, but I think that frankly g5 is the best, and we will come to it last because it is the best. After knight to f6, you should just develop your knight to c3. That's logical. And it makes a lot of sense. You have now two knights, and they have only one knight, which try to attack your pawn on e4. And you definitely shouldn't have played d4 because they could have just taken. And you have developed your knight, because in the king's gambit accepted, it's better to castle queenside if not the extraordinary conditions, which we have mentioned in the previous line of Fischer's gambit. Yeah, after knight to c3, there are lots of options such as bishop to b4, maybe d6. Some try to play some counter gambits such as d5, which plummets the game in one move. Still, it's very much playable. But moving on to next variation is knight to c6. Not the best, but also not the worst. In my opinion, in King Gambit Accepted, you should be as active as possible. But people like to play passive. In this case, similarly, you should just try to develop your bishop. Really, developing is the key. In King's Gambit, developing, sacrificing to have a quicker development is the key. But the King's Gambit is a little risky because in many occasions, if played wrongly, then your opponent can punish and even mate you in first 10 moves, which is not the thing that anybody would aim to. But moving on, after you play bishop to c4, your opponent can play bishop to c5, which will be a normal developing move. After bishop to c5, it's preferable to play d4. But even then, after d4, your opponent now can try to play d5 or d6. Some counter gambits are great in this position. and they prove a lot of opportunities. But it is mostly just a more or less like positional game. About positional games, you can read in my video about Italian game, which also shows some great positions, and be sure to check it out later after this video. So, the best variation of King's Gambit is essentially the black's variation of trying to contemplate to play g5. It is the best variation possible. You see, after they play g5 and you normally develop your bishop, they can go for some attacks. g4, attacking your knight. That's a great idea. But many players here, mostly beginners, will try to just put their knight away, but this would be wrong. You should castle and develop your rook by sacrificing the knight for 2 pawns or even for 1 pawn. That is great combination. And here, instead of pushing g3, your opponent can play and fianchetto their bishop to g7, which is sometimes referred as an old traditional line. So we have an old line, which is your second move is bishop to c4, and the traditional line, which I'm showing you right now. So that's great combination. And I recommend this combination for anyone who has sub 1500 ELO. This combination can really improve your chess play. But all in all, as I have shown in my video, the King's Gambit is essentially one of the best gambits imaginable, and it can have create you a lot of easy wins, even as black, because usually after it takes f4, people go straight up, such as in Queen's Gambit, and play d4, which is the most popular line, and it can be punished with checkmate in 7. So, and I personally would like to thank everyone who watched up until this moment and recommend to check out my other videos and to like and subscribe this one. Thank you.